It's an honor and a privilege to be back in Ann Arbor. Since my graduate school days and before my graduate school days, I've lived in many, many different places, and Ann Arbor remains my favorite city of all the places I've lived. Of course, I haven't lived everywhere. There might be better places somewhere else. Um, and since I'm talking about Michigan, I just sort of explain that in my graduate school days, my dissertation advisor was the late Robert Brower. And when I was picking a topic, one of his comments was, it's important to pick a good topic, one you can live with, because it's something you'll be spending a lot of time with. And he was speaking from unhappy experience. He had come to dislike his dissertation topic intensely and would trot out his dissertation as an example of how not to do it. Uh, and I was lucky in that I did pick a topic which I found fascinating. I enjoyed working on it since publishing the book version of the dissertation. I have gone back to it to fill in details, even though I have mostly moved on to other kinds of research. I'd recently retired from my position at University of California, Davis, and I have another project which I am determined to finish. What today's talk is going to do is look at some things which I've not really gotten around to working on very carefully. The theme of today's talk is topics that I hope a promising student will find interesting. We get Michizane going to the palace. I believe this is Michizane, and he's presenting an anthology of his own works, the works of his father, and the works of his grandfather, all works in Chinese. He's presenting them to the emperor. And let's see, what's the next one? And then there is a banquet shortly afterwards. And after the banquet, an imperial banquet, everyone, it's on the 9th day of the 9th month, which is to say right around this time of year, because of course you add a year, one to the old calendar, and you get the calendar. So it was the autumn. Actually, I didn't think of it. This is the right time for this talk. And Michizane presents a poem to the emperor, the young emperor. Your minister through these years has had his cheerful thoughts, but this night everything arouses only sadness. It's autumn, so of course you're sad. You're always sad this time of year. I hope you realize that. No one happy here? Good. This night, everything are only sadness. The voice of the cold cricket is blowing in the wind, leaves falling from the paulonia tree struck by the rain. You, my lord, are at your peak, while I gradually grow old. Your generosity has been boundless, my repayment always slow. Not knowing how to assuage this feeling, I drink wine, listen to the koto, the musical instrument, and recite poems. And the last line refers to a famous poem by the Chinese poet Bai Zhui, who is the most admired of Chinese poets in Japan, who talked about his three friends, wine, music, and poetry. Another poem Michizane wrote that he really didn't enjoy alcohol very much. Wine didn't do good things to him, but for poetic reasons he did differently. Okay? And that was the end of it. Shortly afterwards, Michizane is sent off into exile. And here we have the retired emperor coming to the palace to protest that Michizane is being sent into exile, and a courtier blocks his way. Then Michizane says farewell to the plum tree in his garden. And this is, again, these illustrations are very valuable if you're interested in sort of cultural history, court life, daily life in the Heian court. Because here again, you see the tatami mats right in the room where he is sitting, that's Michizane, and you see how the doors are constructed. You notice you have hinged doors. You don't associate hinged doors like this with traditional Japanese architecture, but things were very different in the Heian period. And you see the garden, and the garden looks very different from a modern so-called traditional Japanese garden. Has a wilder, less trimmed look to it. And you see the stream flowing through it, and you see the plum tree. And Michizane, of course, always admired the plum tree, and he's saying goodbye to it. Then what's interesting, and this scene is often reproduced. This is not so often reproduced. That moving off there's the point. Michizane is over here somewhere. If you walked over here, you'd end up in the women's quarters. And so you have a picture of the women's quarters. And here you see his wife, and he's said to have had something like 20 or 30 children, so one imagines he had more than one wife. But only the name of one wife is preserved. And one of these would presumably be his wife. I wouldn't know how to identify her. But you see the various ladies in waiting. You see the screens, right? There's a screen which they would have hung up. Here's another one, right? So to preserve their privacy and so forth. So if you start looking at pictures, parts of the picture scroll, which aren't often reproduced, you start discovering all of these little interesting details. And then he says goodbye. When he's saying goodbye to his plum tree, he recites what is his best-known poem in Japanese. When the east wind blows, send me your fragrance, plum blossoms. Doesn't that sound better than apricot blossoms? Although your master is gone, do not forget the spring. Right? And the plum tree was so deeply touched by Michizane's thoughts of it that it uprooted itself and flew down to Dazaifu, where you can see it today. And I downloaded this from the internet. It's somebody's tourist picture, which I stole. And again, if you're good at reading these things, that's the flying plum, Tobi Ume, and there it is. And I suppose these are relatives of whoever took the picture and posted it on the web. I wasn't there when it was blossoming, so I didn't have my own good picture of it. Isn't the internet wonderful? Anyhow, so if you doubt it, you can go down there and see it for yourself. Anyhow, then we get Michizane's journey into exile. And here he is crossing the sea between Honshu and Kyushu. And here's Michizane, and there are people rowing the boat. And again, if you're interested, in things like transportation, here's a picture of a early Japanese boat. This is how they crossed from Honshu to Kyushu in the good old days. And so you see, you see people rowing. You see some of the women. He did bring some of his children with him. He wrote poems to them. The women are ladies in waiting. It's unknown. The other interesting thing about the school is they have a lot of birds. Here you have cormorants, right? Right? And there are a lot of little birds. If you start studying the details, there are a lot of interesting things. The best part of his crossing is the sea monsters, right? Sea monsters. And, oops, I thought I had a close-up of a sea monster. I must have deleted it. Anyhow, the sea monsters are cute. This one in particular is charming. And I thought I had a bigger, I sort of blew it up, but use your imagination. Seems to be smiling, right? And here we have Michizane in exile. And notice the contrast, right? Weeds growing all over, right? Just vines crawling up the pillars to his house. Roof has weeds growing on it. The gateway, the fence around the house covered with weeds. And here's Michizane, and he recites what at one time was his most famous poem in Chinese. Do I have it here? No, I don't. Oh, here, that's for the sake of contrast. That's the earlier one. And let's see. And he recites this poem. And he put some notes in. The notes here are his own. And it's 9th month, 10th day, 1 year after the previous poem. And I'm going to backtrack a bit. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. I'm forward tracking. After he recited that poem where he said, you are old, you are young and I am old and so forth, the emperor was so moved, the emperor gave him a robe. And so here you see the robe that the emperor gave him. You see the imperial crest on it in this box. And he takes it with him into exile. And he recites this poem. Last year on this night, attending at Seiryo, God, there's a typo there. Pardon me. I assume you all know. It's a test. Did you all catch it? No. Anyhow. Name of the imperial residence. He added these notes. My poem, Autumn Thoughts, expressed my lonely grief. By imperial command, we composed poems on autumn thoughts. Mine expressed much frustration. Generously bestowed, that imperial robe is now beside me here. I lift it every day to revere its lingering fragrance. I write this because after the banquet had ended that night, the emperor gave me a robe that I keep with me in a box. Okay, and this was much admired up until World War II, because of course it was an expression of, even though the emperor had basically shafted him and sent him off into exile, where he was living a life of misery, he still, revered the emperor. So up until World War II, this was a greatly admired poem. I don't think it's admired quite so much anymore. And he climbed a mountain to protest his innocence. In the dramatic version, there is a play, Sugawara Denju Tenarai Kagami, translated as, was it Sugawara and the Secrets of Calligraphy? Yeah. And in that play, which it's been nicely translated by Stanley Jones, and in the play version, from the mountain, he just goes flying off into heaven. In the, I've not had a chance to see it. It must be fun. Probably more fun with puppets than with human actors. But in the, he climbs a mountain to protest his innocence. It's in the suburbs of Dazaifu. If you're ever in Dazaifu, I encourage you. You can climb up and protest your innocence there. I don't know. And then he dies, and he's put in an ox cart, and the story goes that the ox at some point refused to move, so ox marks the spot. And nobody gets that one? Okay. And he was buried there. And of course, the story goes that he was born in the year of the ox, he died in the year of the ox. There are all sorts of explanations about why the ox came to be associated with the Tenjin cult. This is one of the reasons. So here they are digging the grave where he's going to be buried because the ox won't move. And they started worshiping him. They became a Buddhist temple on Rakuji in 905, and they started worshiping him there. So the shrine in Dazaifu, which was originally a Buddhist temple, because you don't bury people at Shinto shrines, right? It was originally marked the site of his grave, and it was a Buddhist temple, and it is the earliest establishment that was dedicated to sort of worshiping his spirit, if you will. Well, afterwards, things sort of went downhill back at court. This is the fictional version. And the fictional version, those of you who study history quickly learn that the fictional version is always better than the tedious facts. This is this version from Okagami, which dates from the late 11th century. And there we are told that lightning struck the palace, and here we see the thunder god, right? Lightning striking the palace, and that and it killed one of Michizane's enemies, and I'm not sure which one of these guys. Oh, maybe this one is one getting killed. But Tokihira whipped out his sword and chased him, take him away. Michizane's big rival. Now, in fact, lightning did strike the palace in 930. Tokihira, unfortunately, had died in 909, suggesting that in all probability this was made up after the fact. In all probability. But it's a good picture, and this is another one which is always reproduced. Then we have the Red Sea parting. Oh, pardon me, that's another story. We have Michizane became associated with the thunder god, rain. So there was flooding. And so you have a monk from the Tendai sect, the head of the Tendai sect. He's summoned to say prayers at the palace, and he causes the waters of the Kamo River to part so he can make it across. And again, it's sort of fun to look at all the little details, his attendants, sort of looking back at the rain, the water rushing in, and this one sort of urging the ox on and so forth. When you get to see the whole thing reproduced full size, you realize how wonderful all the little details are. And I'm going to start summarizing now, because what I should end around 1, right? Okay? I'll start summarizing. Tokihira, Michizane's rival, is ill. A monk is summoned to pray for him, and he's the son of Michizane's rival, the one who had slandered Michizane. This is the rival, this is the monk, this is Tokihira, and we know that he's being tortured because if you look closely, you can see serpents coming out of his ears. And the monk is going to say prayers to drive off the evil spirit, but then Michizane's spirit comes and says the monk must stop saying his prayers. He does, and Tokihira dies. So Michizane gets his revenge. Then, shortly after the actual lightning struck, 909, 930 is when the actual lightning struck. 909 is when Tokihira died. Shortly after the actual lightning struck the palace, Daigo, the emperor who'd sent Michizane into exile, abdicates, becomes a monk. And here you see them shaving his head. Okay. Then, shortly after that, another son of Michizane's rival, academic rival, the one who had slandered him, is in Yoshino. We all know Yoshino, up in the mountains, a holy mountain. And he's been meditating in a cave there for 25 years. And then in 941, after 21 days of praying and fasting in a cave, he dies. and is taken on a tour of the 6 ways. And here you see him being taken by a demon on a tour of the 6 ways. And this comes straight out of Buddhism. And here's the entrance to hell. And this is another one which is often reproduced. It's great fun, all of these demons. I don't think this would help you understand court life of the period, but it would show you what they were afraid of. Here's a hell of wailing. Again, people being put on spits, right? Think yakitori, only it's people. And again, but the best part, and this comes from a different picture scroll, you can probably recognize the style of portrayal is different. One of the picture scrolls portrays something which in the main picture scroll is only in the text. The monk who's taking this tour sees the emperor being tortured in hell. There he is, the emperor. And when you think about it, in modern Japan, the idea of portraying the emperor burning in hell, right? Anyhow. And then we come to the last of the worlds, which is, going through the 6 different human worlds, this is a human world of suffering. And what's interesting about this is the example of human suffering. You have several examples. One is you see the house on fire, and here they're running off with all the valuables. But here you see a woman giving birth. Childbirth is one of the examples of human suffering. And there we go. We get this one I blew up. This is closer to the original color. When I was scanning these, I had trouble with the colors. Some of them came out too vivid. I think this is closer to the original color. But this is the woman who is apparently giving birth, hugging a midwife. You have other women attendants. You have a man driving off evil spirits by plucking on a bow. You have a monk reciting sutras. You have a court official reciting another formal prayer. And here you have some men, the typical scene, the men celebrating the birth, right, having a good time. But anyhow, again, I don't know how many pictures there would be of a childbirth dating from this period. It's probably quite unique, and one could do a lot with it. And then finally, here you get the people hauling, the musical instrument, there's probably a koto hauling it away from the fire. And then you get paradise with the angels and so forth. Okay, then you get the story of Michizane's deification, and these come from other picture scrolls. And here you have a woman, Ayako, and I'm just going to try and go faster here because I'm going to run out of time. I'm just going to start leaving things out. Doken, the monk who was taken to hell, he dies, he went to hell, was shown around. He comes back to life and reports on these things to the palace. And if you doubt it, it's there in writing that he died, he went to hell, came back and reported to the court. So, it's in writing, it must be true. And then the story goes that shortly afterwards, children started having visions that they were being asked to pray to Michizane's spirit to pacify it. And you had a girl, Ayako, still could be a girl's name, and she sets up a little shrine in her backyard. And Taro, I like that. Taro, the son, and this is where I wasn't, the book couldn't get it flat on the thing, so it's a little bit out of focus. But anyhow, he has a vision, and his father is a Shinto priest, or a kami worship priest, I suppose we're supposed to call him, I don't know. And they are told to build a shrine at Kitano, which is in, just at that time, it was just north of the palace, just outside the city. And it's a place where they said prayers to the rain god already. So it's already a place associated with prayers to the rain god, with Tenjin worship, just a different, Tenjin being heavenly deity. So they're already worshiping a different heavenly deity there. But with these oracles, they start worshiping Michizane's spirit there. This other scroll shows you them building it. This is from a later scroll. Do I have the dates for it here? Yeah, this is from a scroll dating from around 1300. But it's wonderful. It shows the carpenters using it. I don't know what you call this gadget, but up until quite recently, Japanese carpenters used it. They pull a string, and this thing would have a little soot in it. They pull it through the soot, stretch it out, and tap it on the wood, and it would produce a straight line, and you could cut along it. And up until modern times, you still, if you go to an antique store, you can still find those little things which carpenters used. And there it is. Does somebody know what you call it? I forget. Well, no, but there's a Japanese word. I forget what, anyhow. And then you got a Kitano mandala, straight out of Buddhism. Okay? This one is from the Kitano being today a Shinto shrine. Today it's really very close to the center of Kyoto. In earlier times it had been just north of the city. And here we have a Kitano mandala, and you can see a pagoda here, a Shinto tori here, and you can see a series of figures up top. And let's see, they are from the right. Fudo, a Buddhist deity. Shaka Kinrin, Shakyamuni with a gold wheel, so you don't have to worry about him. Yakushi in the middle, where's the pointer? Lost it, there it is. Yakushi, another Buddhist deity. Aizen, another Buddhist deity. And the most interesting one is Jikaku Daishi, otherwise known as Ennin, a very important historic monk who made a pilgrimage to China. I don't know how he got to rate among all of these Buddhist deities, but there he is. So again, it illustrates how all of these elements were being sort of cobbled together. And talking about Shinto and Buddhism as if they were separate things is nonsense. It was the world of religion which included all of these elements. And personally, I'm happy to call the ones related to indigenous religion Shinto, for want of a better word. But it's nothing like what you think of as Shinto today. Then we have Michizane going to China. Well, in fact, Michizane did not go to China. One of his great contributions was proposing that official missions to China be abandoned. But there was a story that a Zen monk reported that Tenjin, in other words, Michizane's ghost, had appeared in China before a Zen monk, and the Chinese Zen monk already knew him and conveyed secret teachings to him and so forth. So Michizane goes to China, became a standard theme in Japanese painting, and here we have one by Kano Motonobu. And here's one by Kogaku Soko. These are not familiar. Kano Motonobu, he's a famous one. This one I'm not familiar with. Any art historians in the room who know these people? Then I can say whatever I like. But this one you'll notice is by, and this was painted in China. A Japanese monk who went to China in 1511 had a Chinese artist paint a picture with all the correct iconography. You have Michizane wearing what was a Chinese, I'm told this is the garb of a Chinese Taoist monk. I'm not really sure. Taoist priest. And he's always carrying a plum blossom. So here we have him carrying the plum blossom, painted by a Chinese artist and brought back to Japan. You also have something called the Tenjin Sutra, which is fairly simple. And if you can read a little bit, Namu Tenman Daijizai Tenjin. Should sound a little familiar to you, those of you who know Japanese. It's just more or less the same formula used in Buddhism to invoke Buddhist deities. Well, here you're using the same formula to invoke Tenjin. And it became, again, a theme for calligraphy. And this is my favorite example by Kano Tanyu, a very, very famous artist. And you'll notice when you get to the bottom of it, you have a plum blossom growing out of it. Okay, and here you have one. The calligraphy is by the Emperor Goyose, and the picture is by Kuroda Tsunamasa, and these are very famous people. Goyose had close ties to Hideyoshi, and didn't get along with Ieyasu, and had been forced to abdicate. No doubt he felt a certain sympathy with Michizane, somebody who was sort of forced out from power. The picture is by Kuroda Tsunamasa, who is a daimyo in Fukuoka. So very important people. This is a picture of the shrine in Dazaifu as it appeared in 1691. And again, I can't make out all the details, but we are told that it has Buddhist, well, here you can see either a bell tower or a pagoda. I am told that there is a kodo, a lecture hall, which is a Buddhist building, and somewhere, and I can't spot it now, it's hard to see because the picture I have is small, but somewhere it says Anakuji Yakushi. Can anyone spot it there? You have a bigger version of it than I do. But nonetheless, you have the Shinto torii as you enter. You have the, and this part of it looks very much the way it does if you were to go there today. But there are Buddhist buildings in here. Let's see if I can find them. They're hard to pick out because the picture I have is small. Okay, and that's here. There I wind up. These are modern pictures of the Kitano Shrine. And you know what you call this. What do we call this? What is this? Tori. And what does that mean? What do you write? Kanji meaning? Yeah, and what do we see on top here? Yeah, so that's where the term... Yeah. I didn't notice that until I put this slideshow together. But this picture is more appropriate than I realized. If you enter the shrine, you will see images of ox. People rub them. That's the head. That's why the head is a little more polished. I'm just going to go through this quickly. This is the main building. It was put up by Hideyoshi. It's a national treasure. It dates back to Hideyoshi's day. And you have students. You buy your little tablet there, your Emma, and you can put your prayers on it. These are this is Tokyo. This is Yushima Tenjin, and this is already a number of years ago. You write your prayer, which is always to get into the school of your choice. Hang it up there and hope for the best. This is unpublished. And that's the end of my talk. So, thank you.